So good afternoon, everybody. I would like to welcome you to this seminar on the future work and the challenges of digitalization. I will be the chair this afternoon. Before we start, please notice that this seminar is being streamed and can also be accessed later on through Fafo's homepage. Digitalization is a development that since the 1960s has been associated with machines that either replaced employees or foster increased skill demands. On the one hand, researchers have claimed that technological change resulted in the growth of high-skilled and well-paid jobs at the expense of low-skilled and low-paid jobs. In more recent research, however, the picture has become more complicated. For instance, influential US researchers have argued that the occupational structure is subject to increasing polarization, and that large parts of the workforce may be replaced by computers or robots, leading to restructuring and unemployment. The share employed in occupations found in both ends of the skill and wage distribution seems to grow, while the share in the middle is declining. Fafo is just about to start up a new project addressing the future work, where we look into how digitalization of traditional forms of work, new forms for flexible contracts, and platform work will reshape the Nordic working life in the coming 15 to 20 years. The project is financed by the Nordic Council of Ministers and involves researchers from all the Nordic countries. And as a part of this, we plan to give more seminars as this one today in the next couple of years. However, today at this seminar, we ask how the challenges of digitalization can be addressed by the social partners. What can we learn from the German social partners' involvement in initiatives for technological and social innovations such as Industry 4.0, Work 4.0, and regulation of the platform industry? Professor Wolfgang Schroeder from Kassel University will present the results of a study that he has undertaken together with Samuel Gref and Benedikt Schreiter, and how the key players in the German model are approaching the challenges of digitalization. Following that, Kjetil Staalesen from LO and Tønnessen from NITO will give their comments on the report, as well as present what they see as the main challenges in the years to come and how these challenges should be addressed. At the end, we will have a discussion led by Jon Erik Dølvik. But first of all, before we give the floor to the keynote speaker, Fafo's researcher Johan Steen will give a short introduction to the topic seen from the Norwegian setting. The floor is yours, Johan.
All right, thank you very much. Let's see how we get this started. No? There we go. Okay, thanks. So first of all, why are we suddenly worried about the future of work? I will refrain from any long analysis of the technological evolution, but suffice to say that the aggregate result of new technologies that include big data, machine learning algorithms, so-called artificial intelligence, robotics, the Internet of Things, 3D printing, all these things converge to a point where we're approaching a development where computing technology can now spill over from having already revolutionized the way we communicate and our access to information to now enabling something that looks like a revolution of both producing services and producing goods. And here you see a few examples. For working life, the most significant development is probably that we can now automate cognitive routine tasks, exemplified on the left here by IBM's Watson supercomputer and an automated accounting software. Additionally, there's an ever-expanding number of manual tasks that can be automated, of course, exemplified on the right here with a production line, and down on the right, there's a Volvo, and it's actually an example of some of the challenges that faces the Nordic models. This particular Volvo is owned by Uber, which exemplifies the impact of the platform economy. It challenges established forms of employment as well as workers' rights, but it's also a self-driving car. And yesterday, Uber announced that they're buying 24,000 of these vehicles from Volvo. And they're delivered in between 2 to 4 years. So that's a pretty big bet, about 10 billion kroners. that this self-driving technology will be here before most of us imagined. And this car is also produced in Sweden, which pretty much shows us that, well, it's an example at least, that the Nordic countries like Germany can stand to profit from some of these technological advances because, quite frankly, we can deliver them. We have very highly educated workforce. We have an egalitarian wage structure that forces companies to seek high productivity. And in doing so, they adopt technological advances and they engage workers in innovation. But then the papers usually tell us that 1 in 3 Norwegian employees will lose their job to a robot in the next 20 years. The good news is that we have good reason to doubt this number. It's based on a report by Oxford researchers Frey and Osborne, saying that half the numbers in the US are at risk. While the corresponding number for Norway is 1 in 3. This sounds dramatic, but it builds on estimates that really are quite subjective. I won't go into detail here, but they're quite likely to be too high, and they say nothing about new jobs. And all these studies have in common that they only analyze whole occupations and assume that they're automated or not. OECD has looked into this and argued that this might lead to an overestimation, because most jobs still contain a lot of tasks that can't be automated. And with just this distinction, the estimate drops to 10%, which is still a lot of jobs, but it's not historically unprecedented, and the Nordic models have shown that we're actually quite good at handling change on this level. Now, the reason I'm stressing this is because this has been a symptom of the Norwegian debate for some time. It's focused on necessary technological change and seemingly unavoidable consequences. Today, though, I hope we can contribute to a change in this discourse. The question is not so much whether we should fear digitalization or how many jobs could be lost, but how we can shape digitalization and create a future of work that we actually want. Key questions are: how do we avoid labor market polarization? How do we secure the competence needed in the future labor market? And how do we ensure decent and secure working conditions and secure labor rights in a flexible and digital future? Now, I won't answer these questions in my 3 remaining minutes, but we aim to do so in the next 4 years. We are now launching a major project covering these themes, and the Future Work project is financed by the Nordic Council of Ministers. It runs from this year to 2020. It's organized by Fafo, but it brings together about 25 researchers from all the Nordic countries. In all humility, I think we have a pretty strong team. The project will be user-oriented and dialogue-oriented, so this seminar will hopefully be the first of quite a few on these topics. The project itself is organized in 7 pillars. The first seeks to identify the main drivers of change and the most interesting research questions. Now, the second looks at digitalization and robotization of traditional work, in recognizing that this is a development that, while it may destroy some jobs, it's more important that it would likely change almost all jobs and implicate changes in the labor market. Now, the next 2 pillars look at how digitalization can facilitate new forms of work. It looks at self-employed, independent work, and atypical work, as well as new labor market agents, such as platform work and crowd work. Now, the overarching focus for this project will be on labor relations and on the labor market and implications for regulations and policies. There's also a next phase of this project, which will be strategic studies of possible policies which can facilitate or shape future change. The Institute of Occupational Health will look at the impact of digitalization on work environment, with a separate pillar which will investigate the need for legal reform. Now, finally, there will be a synthesizing report on the future of the Nordic models, which will pay particular attention to the interplay between organized actors, markets, and the state, exemplified here by the triangle model. Now, this final report will be released in 2020, so you'll have to wait a bit. But luckily, today we can learn from someone who have already studied these topics for quite some time. Professor Wolfgang Schroeder is the head of the Department of Political Science at Kassel University in Germany. He's also occupied the position on the board of IG Metall, and he's part of SPD's Basic Value Commission. And at this seminar, he is presenting his new report here, which is called Shaping Digitalisation, Industry 4.0, Work 4.0, and Regulation of the Platform Economy. Now, I understand that the report is mainly about Germany, but that is interesting to us because the public debate and also the social partner involvement both started earlier, and as far as I can tell, it's also gotten a bit further, and it's been broader than in the Nordic countries. But he's also done some field work here, so hopefully he can tell us a bit about the differences and what we can learn from the German experience. So, without further ado, please welcome Wolfgang Schroeder.
Hello, I'm very happy to be here, and I will bring some ideas from the German experience to this auditorium. My question is how this new kind of digitalization has implications for the German model, and what does it mean for the social partners. If you look back, we can see this old kind of factories. It's a long time ago. And now we have other conditions of producing and of communication, and that means that work is not the same as in the past, and work in the future will even have new structures as we have it at the moment. The transformation of work is not going on in a silent room. It is in a capitalistic world, and this capitalistic world is changing every day, and the most important actors are not in Europe, they are staying in the United States and in China. And that is a great challenge for Europe, and it's even the great challenge for Germany. When you look back in the year 1995 and you look to the 500 most important enterprises in the world, then you will see in the year 2016, it's about 20 years later, only 50% of these enterprises still exist. That means we have a very huge dimension of change in this world, and the question is, how can trade unions, how can a social welfare state stabilize their structures and their functions under these circumstances of a totally boostering and fastering world? And my three main questions is, what is the digitalization as a challenge, what are the perspectives to the main actors, and what does it mean for trade unions and the social welfare state? Before we can start with these actors, at first I will give a brief view to the special situation in Germany. Germany is this country in the OECD world which is as the only one able since the mid of the 90s to stabilize the percentage of growth in the relationship to the gross national product produced by industry. We have about 22% in Germany, which is the part for the gross national product, and this is a singular situation in the world. If you compare it with the United States has about 12%, France had about 12%, and the United Kingdom even about 15 to 17%. And the question is this only the old economy, or is it possible inside of this old economy to make steps and to make developments which is combining with the new economy? And this is what we called our question. And if you look to the part of workers who are working in this sector. In Germany, it's about 17%, but it's not the whole picture, because if you look that this is like an anchor in our economy, then it means that about 40% of the workplaces and about 40% of the grand national product is depending of the industrial sector. And this industrial sector is more digitalized as we can imagine it the time before. The technological change is driven by artificial intelligence, by robotics, but the most important picture is that what we called Industrial 4.0, and that means the combination between the old mechanic, automatic sector on the one side and the internet on the other side. And so we can say, when we ask what is the spatial perspective, the spatial new dimension of this Industrial 4.0, then we can say one word, and that means data. Data is the basic of this new kind of economy, and the question is who has the data and what will going on with this data, and what is the perspective to given it in the processes. Another point of this big challenge is that it is not only based on broadband infrastructure and all these big points. The other major challenge is that in the process of developing new business, the consumer has a total different role as they have it the time before. The major role of consumers inside of the production sector is something what is totally new, and that has implications not only for the business models, it has even implications for the kind of organizing of work, because the workers, even in the platform sector, has other kinds of response giving to the consumers as ever before. Okay. When we speak about business models, one keyword is disruption. And this is the keyword which is coming from the Silicon Valley area. That means you have always new business models. But if you look to the European kind of developing values, then you will see disruption is not our model, because we are always more working in this kind of incremental processes, incremental advance, and that means it is not only this every new kind of business product or business or a service product. This is more this short and small, and on the basic of this small and short success, you will create new forms of business. That is for the German way very important. Then we have to look to employment. We have heard that this special reports from Fry and Osborne make some world sensation, because people very angry now, because by the implications of digitalization, the danger is that half of all jobs will be inflected, and we will have a big challenge. What will happen with the workforces? Nearly 50% of all employees will inflected of this new challenge. But what does it mean really for the workforce? It's only very restricted view for what is going on. When we look to all new kinds of inventions and of developments, then we can see that we have at the end more jobs than the time before. And so here is only the sensibility that by this new kind of digitalization, it's clear a lot of jobs will not exist in the future. But that is not a new message. That is all what happens inside of the capitalistic system. And so in my perspective, this is not so important. More important is what will happen with the labor market, and this is, we will have a new kind of polarization between different kinds of job. Or in another perspective, we can say no job at the moment will so in the future, and so we will have a system of a very strong, very huge change of workplaces and of qualifications and of challenges by every person. And this is a big, huge challenge what trade unions have to understand, because this is their job to accompany and to support workers, employees, to have a chance under this special circumstances of development, of change, and to secure and to protect their position, and that needs to understand what kind of challenge is this. And when we describe and to different levels of qualifications, then we can say we have low skill, middle skill, and high skill, and the most important difference between the time before and now is in the middle skill direction of qualification, and that is a little bit new if you compare it with the time before. Before, rationalization and automatization in the time before was in most cases for a negative for the low-skilled people, and now we have it strongly for the middle scale even. Or when we look to different levels of qualification or to different qualification clusters, then we can say people who are working in creative jobs, they will have better chances than the time before. If we look to people who are working in service sector with other people, so what we called personalized jobs, then we will see these jobs are increasing. But jobs which can be substituted by machines, which are routine jobs, that will have a very bad future under the circumstances of digitalization, and that is nothing new for United States or Europe. There is no difference. That is a worldwide trend which we can see. Then the most important point, what I mentioned, is the transformation of work, and the core position of transformation in my position perspective is qualification, but we have to look much more, because the old work in the industrial sector was in a hierarchical dimension. You have the top, and they give the demands and so on. And the new kind of work is the so-called agile work. That means you have egalitarian work, you have group work, you have more independent work, and this means you have more freedom, you have more independence in the field of shaping, in the field of decision making. But on the other side, it could mean that you have more intensification of improvements and of challenges. And the question is how you can regulate work which is more informal, which is more over the borders, which is more under stress and so on. And this is even a big challenge for trade unions and the social welfare state, because the human capital must be protected, that they're not is exhausted under the special circumstances of digitalization. And new forms of employment means not even that it is employment under the old structure of work which is independent. It could even mean that we have this kind of solo self-employed, as a self-employed work, and this is especially in this field of crowd working. This is, if you look to the number of employees or of people who work, there is not such a huge dimension, but it is in the perspective of transformation of work, it's a real new challenge because it's outside of our labor law and it's outside of the structures of social welfare protection. Then we have to bring a look to the special elements of the German model. The German model is very successful because it's not only Fordism, it's diversified quality products. That means you have this strong field of what we call skilled workers on the basic of apprenticeship, of the basic of strong production workers. And then we have this sectoral specialization. And in the center of the sectoralization in Germany is standing the car sector, the machine sector, chemical sector. That's about 60–70% of our industry, and this is the anchor of what we call the export-oriented German model. And this path-dependent model was in the last 50 years able to have a lot of capacities to understand what are the new challenges and how they can improve their technological and working base fundamentals to have this competitiveness to work under the new globalization. And the skilled workers regime in Germany is not only based on the apprenticeships, it's even based on strong trade unions, which have in this export-oriented sector a membership degree by about 60–70%, but only in the export-oriented sector. The German trade union model is very weak in the service sector. We have there a big asymmetry when we have in the export-oriented sector 60–70%, and we have in the service sector, in the domestic market, about 5–20% membership degree. That makes it not very easy to bring this model together and have a strong basic to shape the whole welfare state. And that is even the fundament of a lot of struggles and unclear situations how the German model can go in the future, because these differences between the export-oriented sector and the domestic sector is increasing in Germany. So now we come to this Industrial 4.0 point. This is a picture where you can see we started with the mechanical production in the 19th century in the United Kingdom, then the second industrial revolution in the United States by the mass production, which is called Fordism, and then the third industrial revolution by the computer, by electronics. There, we have to mention that in 1937 the computer is founded in Berlin by Mr. Zuse, but all the developments after this big invention are going on in the United States under the circumstances of the militarian and hippie clusters in Silicon Valley and in other special circumstances of this big market. And the fourth industrial revolution, where the old machine factories and the new internet is going together, is an invention in Germany to build up a strategy to say that is one of the last chances for a country and for Europe to bring their special strengths to this world market. And when we will have a chance, then we can realize this chance not only by market. We need more capabilities to realize this big possibilities, and that is what is in the center of my contribution here, how we can bring it together. I make this difference between three ways to generate innovation. We have in the first position the Silicon Valley model. That means even that in the core you have money, you have innovative people, and you have this militarian complex, and this special mixture is what we can see in the United States, and the result is that the big five in the world are coming from this special mixture. And the second big player is Chinese, and they bring it top down, and Alibaba, for example, is here a big player, and they are very successful in develop this new kind of digitalization in a market way, and it's not even successful in the Asian area. Even if you look what kind of companies they sell in and buy in the last years, and you see they are very successful in Europe and the United States, and maybe the future will be a battle between this Silicon Valley model and this top-down model from the Chinese. And my point is we have a third chance to create digitalization as a strong position in the world market, and a third offer to say this old way of combination and debate and structuring by state and by society and by assemblies like associations like trade unions and business organizations, or the old term is corporatism. This old kind of third way politics organizing as we know it from the 70s and 80s could have a revival under the special circumstances of digitalization when we think it in a new way. Is it possible to generate innovations, new money, and new perspectives of technological change by state and associations and civil society? And the Germans try to do it. This is not the only way. This is very clear, but it could help to improve the structures, to have a strong basis in technological improvements and to anchor these improvements in the society. And Germany built up in the year 2011 some of these ideas, and one institutionalized way is the platform Industry 4.0, which started in the year 2015, and this is strong oriented to technical solutions, because if you have the standardization, if you have this security and network systems, and you can work with other nations and other industrial inventions, then you can be part of this new world, and this is the idea of Industrial 4.0. Then we have this alliance for the future of industry that is more to what I mentioned, to the political and societal structural improvement and how we can find the acceptance and the legitimation of the society to go this way, because it's different if you are organizing this way of digitalization in a democratic society or in an autocratic society. In a democratic society, you need the acceptance of the society, and you need to organize new compromises between the different players. And the question is how you can find these compromises and what does it mean for the generation of innovations and the participation of the most majority of the society in this way. And that is what the Nordic countries, what Europe united, that we are looking for ways to have digitalization in an integrated society and in an integrated economy. So that is what I can tell you to the future of industry. Here you can see what are the content of this process, of this political way of finding new compromises. They are looking for the attractive way of industry inside of society. They are looking to more investment in digitalization. They are looking for better jobs and even looking for the competitiveness. So this is a big range of different issues, and this is the basic where nearly 20 different actors are coming together from trade unions, from business organizations, and from the state, and this all is accompanied from a lot of scientific organizations which are interested to develop this strategy. This is all oriented to the question how we can improve a special approach in the question of Industrial 4.0. Then we have a very interesting process which is organized by our Ministry of Labor, and this ministry started 2015 to 2016, a process which is very well known by the European Commission. This process is known from the Green Book to the White Book, and they asked what is the future of work, what is work 4.0, and how can, under these new circumstances of digitalization, good work can shape, and what is the role of the different actors in this new world. And they practiced this for over 1 year, and they were very successful, not only in participating and in developing new ideas, they even make some what can we say, some solutions. Oh, some solutions. How? Oh, is a problem? No, I have to cook. No, it works. It works. Some solutions to the field of qualification, to the field of. Also, okay.
Sorry.
So I have 2 minutes more. So, yes, okay, that's fine. Okay, the great idea is to build up a new flexibility compromise for our society, and how can we give a new idea that people have the right of non-availability under this circumstance of digitalized work, which cannot know any border, but we need borders as human beings. Then how can we oriented and structured life-oriented labor and social policy? How can we combine new law and collective agreements? Here you can see it's not only to the social welfare state oriented, it's even to the actors in the field of industrial relations, and what can the actors in the field of industrial relations do to ensure operational accuracy of fit. Then we have this crowdworking, that is a special field. I will say nothing to this, and then I will come to my end so that I can do it in the time you give me. The starting point is that we can see in Germany the attempt to find an own way besides Chinese way and the United States way, and this way is very close to what we even know from the Nordic model, how people, how organizations can work together, and what can the state do to bring more money to a good industrial strategy, what can the state do to build up a bigger and firmer structure to secure and to protect people, that they will have not so much trouble in having the ability to fit to the new world of labor, and how can they empowerment the people to bring up the energy to live in this new world. And the main thinking of to understand what is the task in this new world is to say it is a wrong way to look only to the technological possibilities. It is at least so important to give social innovations and to find ways of a good form of political corporatistic cooperation and of micro-cooperation. It is not only the macro-corporatism, this is at least the corporatism on the plant level, on the regional level, and on the central level to have a chance to improve and to develop the abilities which are necessary to find a good way under these new chances of technological and scientific advance we see. But we will have only a social advance when we strengthen the capabilities in the society, and to strengthen the capabilities in the society means that the political actors on the level of the state and the associations must orient their policies in a new way. Many thanks for your silence.
Thank you very much. And now to the commentators, so to speak. We will hear from two representatives from the social partners. First, Kjetil Staalesen from the LO. He's a special advisor in LO and has previous, as far as I know, been working in one of the sectors most affected by digitalization so far, namely the finance sector. The floor is yours, Kjetil.
Thank you very much. I think the updated Murphy's Law should state that if you are to give an address on digitalization, your PowerPoint is bound to malfunction. So I skipped the whole thing. Thank you, Herr Professor Schroeder, hosts at Fafo, for inviting me. I've read the report with great interest. There are no doubt many similarities between the strategy currently being pursued by our German friends and the policies preferred by LO, my employer. It's of course extra intriguing to read an analysis comparing Germany with the Nordics. Germany being the enviable, but also a bit intimidating export machine that it is. In LO, we are extremely concerned about the risks and opportunities that digitalization brings to the workplaces of our close to 1 million members, and the consequences for our society as a whole. Our mission in this regard is to enable ourselves to embrace new technology and processes in a way that empowers and enriches all of our citizens. It's not surprising, but still interesting to see that the challenges are so similar to those of Germany, from the complexities of meeting the international competition to how the difference in interest from the employer and the employees are formulated in almost the exact same way. Wage guarantees versus contractual freedom, predictability versus flexibility. The way I read the paper, it seems we might have a larger degree of consensus in Norway, so far, at least, perhaps due to us being such a small country in comparison to Germany. On a side note, when I told a German fellow tourist I met in Italy last summer that I was Norwegian, his light-hearted response was, 5 Millionen Einwohner, das ist ein Dorf. To us in LO, it's obvious that for a small country to compete successfully abroad, we have to cooperate at home. Industri 4.0 is an inspiring example in that regard. Now, work life has many characteristics. Among them is the fact that it is a power game. There are huge differences between voluntary and imposed non-standard work. The difference between a well-known copywriter or an IT professional being able to charge a premium on their work or even their personal brand on the one hand, and the Uber or Lyft driver on the other hand, waiting for the telephone to light up with work for today, temporary engagement, fixed price that they cannot influence. This difference must not be underestimated. At LO, we do not wish to see a situation with a legal framework is adapted only to the former and most resourceful part of the workforce, leaving the rest to cope as best as they can. The question raised by the future work are many and universal. For example, who are the employers? Who are the employed? Who are the bargaining partners? And as you describe in your paper, we need to find good answers and definitions that enable us to enjoy the fruits of technology while at the same time protecting the human, our right to self-determination in the workplace and in our private lives. As has often been said in the Nordic labor movement, we're not afraid of the new machine, we're afraid of the old one. That means we've no interest in behaving like the Luddites of the past, but from the perspective of the employee, the sharing and gig economy apps are not the weaving machinery that increased productivity in 19th century England. They share more similarities from the view of the employee, with the forced export of cheap cotton to Britain combined with forced export of clothing from Britain, which is good, of course, if you are Britain, but it did little to grow the Indian or American economy at the time. Lack of control over the structure and technology that rule the different areas of production can force countries into a trap where we end up importing high-value services and commodities and are bound to export low-value stuff. Obviously not a healthy strategy for a country, especially not an advanced one like Norway or Germany, with relatively high wages and prices. For us, competing globally on who can provide the lowest wages is not an option. Now, Uber, as an example, is meeting legal setbacks in many countries, including ours. We are among the actors that oppose them. However, we see no reason to indulge in schadenfreude. This is not going to go away. Value-creating technology will prevail in time. And when it does, we need to have the framework and agreements we need to make them work for us. Meanwhile, the challenge of being a global crowd worker living in a high-cost society should not be thought lightly upon, neither the polarization of the work market, labor market, described in your paper. In LO, we prize ourselves on being on the lookout for new and better ways to organize production, while at the same time caring about the achievements already made in the workplace. Business models cannot expect to be global in a way that's oblivious to regional and national interests and differences. But neither can we expect to be allowed to stick with our old ways of doing things. In LO, we are certain that Norway's economy also in the future must include manufacturing. The ripple effects of manufacturing, both on the economy and on our ableness to develop skills and competence, is invaluable. This is another reason we're so interested in the Germany Industry 4.0. Now, in a world where global monopolies are forming and winners, if allowed, will take all, it is refreshing to read the following paragraph from your paper. It's from page 7, describing the German Sonderweg. On one hand, you write, diversified quality production in engineering, and on the other, a politico-economic system based upon cooperation that closely integrates the state, companies, science, and civil society. The coordinated action of a range of actors is important in order to preclude the fixation on technological and economic considerations and to make room for social and societal opportunities. In brief, a digitalisation strategy that increases societal and regional inequalities and deepens the social divide has no chance of success. We applaud you. This paragraph could be written into LO's charter. In fact, I think the essence is already there. So what do we do? LO are proactive in providing and supporting political initiatives like Digital 21, which is more than a little bit similar to Germany's Industry 4.0 working group. We accept changes in businesses and in legal framework, also changes that are harsh on individuals. But we do so with at least 4 demands. 1, we demand a strategy for lifelong learning in the workplace. When millions of adults are expected to master new skill sets, this is not a responsibility only for the individuals, and it's going to come with a hefty price tag. 2, we demand full throttle on job creation. Workers who have confidence that they will stay employed will not oppose change. Workers who lack this confidence will cling on to what they've got, and quite understandably so. 3, we demand that the growth in productivity that follows in the path of new processes and new technology will lead to higher real wages over time. And last but not least, 4, we demand that the people that for one reason or another end up on the outside of the workforce in the future work are acknowledged for having taken one for the team, so to speak, and are compensated as such, i.e. That we preserve the social safety net of the welfare state. If these, if I may say so, quite reasonable demands are met, LO will embrace new technology and processes that will grow the economy for everyone. It's not going to be easy. If that was the case, I think everyone would have done it by now. But we have confidence in the power of strong unions and employers' associations, being able to agree on the big questions so that we can bargain on the smaller ones. Our own most important job in LO is obviously to stay relevant and representative, being able to provide pre-tax redistribution in the form of collective wage formation, compression, and growth. So based on our values, we in LO, like Germany, choosing the path between and including both markets and politics, we need to do this in an informed environment, which is why we welcome studies like this that light up the path ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last speaker for discussion is Tønnessen. She is head of research at NITO, the Norwegian Society of Engineers and Technologists, a trade union that has faced several technological shifts since its foundation in 1936. Floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to talk on behalf of NITO at this seminar. It was a really interesting report. I read it, and it was a really interesting presentation. I also enjoyed the comments from LO. We are quite a different trade union from LO. We are the largest trade union for engineers and technologists in Norway, with about 86,000 members. We are an independent trade union, so we have no party political affiliation, and we are not a part of a confederation. And I must say that NITO mainly sees digitalisation as an opportunity, and our members, they show a very positive attitude towards new technology. 97% of them do not fear for their jobs due to automation or replacement by robots. But of course, some of them, I suppose, should be afraid. Because, yes, like we heard from Steen, 33% of jobs can be lost in Norway due to digitalization. I suppose some of them will also be engineers. And I also think what Schroeder was saying about this polarization and that the middle segment is losing. I suppose our members are somewhere between the high middle and the high competence, but I think, of course, many of them will be threatened. So we have to meet the changes with the right policy measures. Yeah. I think one very big difference between Norway and Germany is that we have really been lagging behind when it comes to establishing like a national strategy. And we don't just lag after Germany, we also have been lagging behind the other Nordic countries in this area. We now have, in 2017, a new industrial strategy for Norway. It was the first one for 37 years. I think that says quite a lot. And this included this white paper, a greener, smarter, and more innovative industry. And it includes bodies like Digital 21, Digital Norway, and a top leader forum. I think they are all inspired by the Industry 4.0. For instance, Digital 21, as I also mentioned, has been an initiative from the social partners, including NITO. So there's a question, why are we so late in establishing this strategy? Well, maybe we have been too well off for too long time. We are not hungry enough, and maybe we need some crisis, which we've had some crisis the last years. So that might be some of the reasons we have been happy with how things are. This competence education and lifelong learning is, I think, the most important subject here for NITO. Even if there has been some unemployment between engineers the last 2-3 years, there's quite a big lack of ICT personnel, and this lack is supposed to increase. So there is fear that we will have a skills gap. So we think it's very important to increase the number of students and the quality of education within the ICT. And when it comes to succeed in the future, we need to have a really strong emphasis on continuing education so that competence is maintained and developed, as the content of job changes very rapidly. Therefore, and upskilling is needed throughout the whole career. And I think maybe this is one point where we might disagree a bit with LO, because I don't think that, for instance, engineers have so much more possibilities to and upskill their capabilities. So we think this is maybe the most important point in this subject, and that authorities, employers, and our trade unions need to take responsibility for this. Maybe to establish funds, or we also have this, we are working on to maybe establish something called Kommentarer. To make businesses invest more in competence development. Yes, and this is where we totally agree with LO. The industry must be based on permanent appointments and employees' active participation. As I think this was also very important in Germany. Permanent hiring and employee involvement give better value creation, productivity growth, innovation, and creativity. And I think the Norwegian model is the key to our high productivity and adaptability. And the last years, I think this model has been under attack. And actually our members say that they are more afraid of the attacks on the Nordic model than the challenges of digitalisation. I think it's important that this model has to survive, and it even has to further develop from today. And as I was just talking about this lifelong learning, this is one of the elements that needs to be taken much more care of within this model. when it comes to the sharing economy. We see both the possibilities and the challenges. And we believe that the sharing economy, or the platform economy, can be a sustainable contribution to the Norwegian economy in some areas. But at the same time, it represents obvious challenges: weakening of labor rights and protection of workers, increased black economy, decreased union density, and then again weakening of the welfare state and the Norwegian model. And of course, we do discuss in our union how can we secure decent and safe working life for our members in the future. We will, of course, continue the political work. At the same time, we have to look at our in-house policy. What kind of new services do we need to provide for our members? Should we change a lot of it? And I think it's important that we do change, also to be relevant to members that might actually be in new forms of work. But at the same time, I think it's very important that we do not, that we are not too defensive in these strategies. So I think I'll say thank you for now and join the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then we will continue with the discussion. So if all of the speakers could take a seat up here. And I will hand over the microphone to Jon Erik.
Jeg kan stå her, jeg. Skal vi sette oss, eller? Ja,
Vil du se rett i fjellet?
I suppose this will go in English.
Yes.
So, and you're supposed to sit down.
Okay, thank you.
And just remember to use the microphone when you talk, because of the stream.
Yeah, after a decade where the Nordics have been self-congratulating themselves with the world record in having the best model and heading every rankings, is somehow refreshing to hear that some of the old, the bad man of, or the ill man of Europe from some decade earlier, Germany, is coming with some ideas, and it seems even practices that are quite a bit ahead of how the world's best social partners are heading. So I'd like to start with a little round about how can we account for that. In your report, Wolfgang, it's cited the report saying that yes, the Nordics are still ahead in digital performance. We have a lot of duppedits and other things, but we are lagging ahead. And I think it was Tone perhaps, or it was mentioned that Norway is lagging more. Because we have had oil, we are sheikhs. So while Germany is racing ahead from being the sick man of Europe, suddenly way ahead. So there's no guarantee of being world best model, or being it 5 years down the road. So I guess this is a question to the Norwegians more than the Germans, but you can comment upon it. How come that with so strong tripartite traditions in the social and labor market field, that when it comes to industrial policy, I don't remember any big initiatives in my last 20 years that really we can brag about. How do you explain that? Politically? Or is it the social partners? Or the floor, who will start?
Good question. I'm not sure what it could be if in fact there is such a phenomenon. I mean, things have been going on quite well. I think we should be very prudent to consider the oil and gas as a drawback, for example. It's provided us with great wealth and lots of modern technology and competence. I would not call it a drawback, and I don't think it's going to be in the near future either. Now, obviously, to be rich bears with it, or it comes with a risk of complacency, and we should obviously try to avoid that. But I think Norway is in the best position, maybe in the world, to grab the possibilities of digitalization, and whether or not we've done the right thing the last 10 or 20 years, I'm not to say. But I mean, with as you said in your opening, with our people, extremely skilled workforce, the languages that we speak, the stable democracy and all that, the way I see it, we are in the best positioned probably in the world if we do the right thing now, which is what we really ought to be concerned about, I think.
Yeah, and Tone?
Well, yes, I to a large degree, I agree to a large degree with Elo. And absolutely, the oil has not been a drawback at all. But I think maybe we have become a bit too comfortable with it. Yeah, I think what I also mentioned when we had to wait 37 years for a new industry report for a strategy for Norway. I think it says that maybe industry has a higher standing in Germany than in Norway. At least when in Oslo we think of industry, many of us, as something dirty we don't really want to have. Yeah. But it is in the future, so that's very important for us to remember.
When you mentioned this greener, smarter and faster and better Norwegian industry white paper, how would you characterize it? Which direction does it point to? What's the Norwegian, so to say, trust of the strategy? I noted that many actors were quite content with it, but is it very similar to Industry 4.0, or is it more towards services or cod or fish or?
You're asking me?
Yeah, you too.
Yeah. I thought it was directed to my colleague over here. Well, the way if you're referring to Digital 21, which I think you are, it's in the startup phase. We are a couple of years behind Germany, but we're a small and agile country, so we'll catch up. And we're looking at the entire labor market in the private sector, and from LO's standpoint and viewpoint, as I said, we need to make sure that we keep a degree of manufacturing in our an industry, because like I said, the ripple effects on services and on competence, it's enormous, and the way we see it, Germany is doing everything correct in that respect. That's what we want to copy and maybe even do better.
And Tone?
Yes, no, I think that the white paper we thought was quite good. I think it's inspired from Germany and the Industry 4.0. So it was just a bit late, but I think we were quite happy with it. When it comes to the bodies of it, we are actually not represented there, and we are, as I said, not a part of a confederation. So that might be something to work with on the Norwegian level. That maybe. But
do we have the tools to implement it, or is it just on paper? Good thoughts, nice intentions, or?
I think we are coming there, but there is still much which is only on the paper. But I think these bodies have we're going to take it up. So I really hope so. But so far we are not sure what actually lies there. Yeah.
Well, to Wolfgang, when you have been in a situation of deep crisis 25 years ago, how do you explain that Germany has turned around so fast and suddenly is the big export machine of, it always was, but that the German economy, and you even have a job miracle 25 years later?
I think there are different reasons to explain it. The first is that the pressure to Germany was so much in the starting years of the new century that can you not imagine when you see in 2003 when the European public is speaking about Germany as a sick man of Europe, then we have about 5 million people unemployed, we have no growth, we have no idea where Germany can go in a better way, and this was a strong motivation to do it better. That's the first point. The second point is that German industrial development was not just starting in the year 2003. The most important starting point for the improvement of the German industrial development is in the middle of the 90s, because between 1993 and 1995 was the biggest crisis in German production sector. It was the so-called Gesamtdeutsche Krise. It was after the German unification. It was in the situation that the Germans are not have this challenge by the Japanese and the Americans. It has even the strong ties from the past, and it is clear that this strong ties of the past is a big burden for the future. And then the Germans started to understand the conditions of the Japanese success, and they tried to take the Japanese kinds of qualification production, of group work, of association work, and so on. And this was what a lot of observers see step by step, and it needs about 10 years. Then this kind of work has success. No? That, for example, it's very interesting when you see this term of the sick man of Europe in 2003, and in the same time there were some articles in the Economist that Germany has to do his homework, and it will need some time till this homework will realize in new success. Why tell I you this story? That means that it needs a lot of time, maybe 10, 15 years, that you can find a new track. And what we are talking about now, this new strategy of Industrial 04 is, when I look back, it started in the years 2001, 2002, when the state has the idea that the state and the private enterprises by themselves alone not able to establish a new strategy. And why say, and because they see this situation, they established new institutions. And one of these famous institutions is Akatec. This is a special institution besides the state, besides the enterprises, which is responsible to develop structures of improvement. And such institutions, even in the past, was very important for the German strength in the industrial sector. For example, even one of the famous institutions which built up the strategy 040 is the Fraunhofer Society. The Fraunhofer Society is a scientific institution, chain work from different institutes, and this institution has 20,000 engineers. 20,000 engineers, and this institution was the institution which built up this strategy in 2011. And this institution was very strongly close connected, not only to private enterprises, even to the trade unions and business associations and so on.
Thank you. You will have the floor more.
Okay.
We have not that much time. It would be nice if any in the audience afterwards could get time for a question or a remark or whatever. But first, I think we should jump to the next big theme in your report. And it was mentioned by Tønnessen and Kjetil there. Also, training. Whatever we know about the digital future, we know that people will have to adjust faster and perhaps move longer in terms of occupations, sectors, companies. We need what we used to price as for in the Nordic context, high mobility. But today, mobility is not just a matter of moving your family somewhere, it's a matter of adopting new skills. And I would first like to ask Wolfgang how the German system for lifelong training is shortly, how it is built up and how it is funded. And then we jump over to the Norwegian context and I'll ask you about similar questions.
At first, in Germany, we have no system of lifelong learning which is really functioning. We have an apprenticeship system, which means that you have a special mixture of taking part in school and taking part in enterprise by 3 years. And then we have different kinds of doing learning after this apprenticeship. But this, what we called lifelong learning, is very strongly dependent from every plant, every enterprise, every individual people, and what we need is a system of lifelong learning. That's the first point. Second point is we need more special kinds of direct learning by the workplace, because this special kinds of further educational work outside of the workplace is too heavy, is too predictionist, and that means we need the direct connection between people who needs help, who needs more knowledge, and their workplace. Otherwise, we will not able to integrate the whole mass of workers in a new system of knowledge improvement. And the second point is we have, that could be an answer of all these questions. We have in Germany this system of labor insurance, but this labor insurance is always only working when you are unemployed. And we need a working insurance which can give you the conditions, the opportunities to take qualifications when you need it, when you want it, and to build up qualifications, certifications to avoid that you will be not unemployed. No? And this is what we are debating about 2 decades, but it is not clear if we were able to integrate it under this political situation we have at the moment.
This sounds somehow like Yngve Haagensen's big thought in the 90s about finding a way to fund lifelong learning in Norwegian working life. But why haven't we, or what is your assessment? How are we equipped, and why are we not good enough equipped in this field? Tone?
Well, we are absolutely not well enough equipped. A survey among our members show that 4 out of 10 engineers say that they don't have any opportunity to or are offered any formal or relevant postgraduate or further education. So this is a huge challenge. And I also think that as Wolfgang was talking about this apprenticeship, and this is something that we also lack, I think, in Norway. We need a much more closer cooperation between the companies and the universities and schools. Something that we also have been working on lately in NITO is the possibility to take university courses while you are while you are unemployed.
Yeah.
On that scheme. It's quite difficult, but I think we have come some way, and I think we are on the move. So yeah, but there are big challenges here, and I think we have to go along with the employees' organizations, and also to have the authorities amongst us. We all have to make an effort.
Yeah, but employers are not really enthused about paying more for.
No, they're not,
collective things.
and which is why we have to. And luckily, I think we're well positioned to do this, and because I mean, this is the Norwegian tour de force to get people in the room and agree on how should we do this without too much conflict. And I mean, if we end up in a situation, and I'm not endorsing this as an idea, I'm not saying it's a good idea, but there are some 50, 60, I think, thousand Norwegians working in over-the-counter trade. Say in the future they need to re-educate themselves into, say, nurses or something. My bet is on that the shareholders of XXL or Elkjøp or whatever, they're not too happy about footing the bill for that one. They're not going to do that voluntarily. And perhaps they shouldn't, at least not the whole bill. But I don't think it's a good idea to take 20, 30, 40,000 people out of the workforce for 2, 3, 4 years either. So we need to find a way to do this together, and I can't see any other country in the world that are better positioned to do that. We have the money, we have the skills, we have everything it takes, I think.
Do you agree, Johan?
Well, in some ways, yes. We are very well positioned in some terms. We don't do that well at the PISA studies, but we do really well in the OECD survey of adult skills. So you actually do learn a lot being a Norwegian employee. But as your example with over-the-counter workers, this will hit some sectors really, really hard. And at the moment, we don't have the systems in place to really handle that. And so my sort of question back to you is whether collective agreement could play a larger part in this, and what is needed to get this into collective agreements or tripartite agreements where the state foots some of the bill. We actually did a little survey of this that will be presented in a note. I think it will be available tomorrow, which looks at...
Just in time.
Yeah, it's, I actually even brought one. It's here. Fresh off the printing press. That's a small report on collective agreements and their competence. What role they have in competence building. And what we've found is that there are a lot of systems already in place, many of them from the 70s, but they do exist. And they vary a lot between different sectors. In some places this works quite well. Other places these are pretty dormant rules. But it will be very interesting to see if that is something we could build on. And there was sorry. The basic agreement between LO and NHO was concluded a couple of weeks ago, and it's as usual more of a formality than anything. But I saw that you actually agreed to revise the appendix on technological and computerized systems, which was written in the 70s and not used that much. But I was wondering if that's a hint that there will be more cooperation on this.
As I'm sure every union representative that's ever been sitting here has said before me, we will not do negotiations in front of a camera and an audience. And I'm not going to start that now. But obviously, collective agreements will be affected by this, and they will affect the life out in the businesses and in the public sector as well. So, and I'm sure we're going to handle that. We have all the tools. What we need to reach is agreements. And we've been doing that quite peacefully since, what is it, 1936 or something? I'm sure we can manage.
And what do you do then about the 50% of employed in private sector that are not covered by collective agreements? Are they left to
No.
fall down in the unskilled, unemployed masses, or?
I hope not. Well, first of all, it's their choice not to organize, as long as the unions are representative, as I would say that we still are. We will also we will do the work also for them. I mean, they make the same wages that our members do. So we take that responsibility, and we intend to keep doing that. But obviously, and as I said in my address, we need to be both relevant and representative if we are to do this job on behalf of everyone, as we are doing now.
Would you you said something about kompetansefund, Tone?
Well,
Would
that
you like
was
to add
that was maybe one thing that we believe that the authorities could actually do as one step to that to deduct the investments in competence development. That's one suggestion we are looking into and trying to see how it could be designed such a scheme. So yeah.
Before we take a final, very brief round, are there any urgent questions from the audience? We will come back with further seminars on this issue. It won't leave us in 2 or 3 years. Are there any employers here? No, oh, you're bucking down. Yeah? No. We start here, and then we go to Eivind Hoffmann.
Thank you for a very interesting...
And please be brief. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Robin Waller, Chairman of Diversity in the Workplace, Mangfold i arbeidslivet. I'm not a political scientist, only a macroeconomist originally. Technology is accelerating in speed and acceleration. A critical factor is, from my point of view, is shared values. The more complicated not only a company, a society becomes, the more importance needs to be put and focused on when it comes to values. And then jumping then on that basis, when it comes to China, which is going to very, very soon, more and more, be the dominant. I don't know how many years, but you are a political scientist, so maybe you could comment on that. And that will have repercussionary effects in business and in every way politically over the next 20 or 15 or whatever years. Could you come with some comments on that, please?
We gather to the final round, and then there was once more. Yeah, Hoffmann, as always, yes.
My name is Eivind Hoffmann. As a semi-retired toolmaker in the field of labor statistics, I think that both the German and the Norwegian researchers, or Nordic researchers, should feel an obligation to examine and recommend what kind of statistics are needed to monitor and evaluate the developments that you are foreseeing and observing in the projects that you are conducting. And an opportunity to advise the National Statistical Office on one particular aspect, namely working contracts arrangements in the new economy, is coming up in October next year, when the International Labour Office is having its International Conference of Labour Statisticians to discuss, among other things, new recommendations on contractual arrangements in the labour market. Thank you.
Thank you, and then I think the Bureau of Statistics can reply instantly. Torgeir Nesheim is behind there. Or do you want to add something there? It's definitely a measurement problem when trying to approach these things. So if the Bureau of Statistics, which is restructuring anyway, could also take on these tasks.
It always ends up that the statistics Norway have to get in order all this. It's a very complicated area, and concerning the ILO, my experience that it's very connected to different institutional arrangements in countries, so it's not very easy to get a common view on this. But to come to the Norwegian situation, we had a new register on employees coming up in 2015, and the interesting that it includes a special kind of workers called freelancers or something like this, which it's a little bit in between ordinary employees and self-employed. And we are looking into the information coming from this register, and I hope to have a report in the beginning of next year. So maybe together with the researchers we can find out, is this something we could use to describe the future in this field? Thank you.
Now back to the panel. Since we are on overtime, what's the most important thing to do within the next 5 years from your point of view, in your country, in your context, in this, to master these transformations? And we start with Elo.
The most important thing to do in 5 years. I think I'll just go back to the room where people have to reach an agreement on how to do this. We do need to, I mean, there are so many things to admire in Germany, and we do, but I don't think you'll find many people who want to look into the Hartz IV and the wage formation and the minimum wages, and we have to do this in our own way. We have to transform while keeping the unemployment low, keeping participation high, wages compressed and high. And if we do that, I think the rest will be a walk in the park.
For Germany, Wolfgang?
The most important point for the German constellation is to strengthen the organization of labor, to make pressure to improve the ability for doing a better job towards the employers and towards the state. Because when it is not necessary to strengthen the organizations of labor, the trade unions, then it will be impossible to create this rooms, this social welfare state, which is necessary to build a framework for this new world of digitalization. And the key is strong trade unions. It's a problem for Germany.
And Tone?
Yes, well, I think we have the best preconditions to succeed. But I think the Norwegian model has to further develop. Lifelong learning is key. And maybe we should also introduce this work for zero, as Wolfgang here was talking about, besides the industry.
Final word, Johan. Thank you.
All right. I don't know if I'm in a position to dictate what we should do for the future, but on a societal level, I guess that reskilling and competence building might be the key issue. As researchers, I think we will, as to your comment on what kind of statistics are needed, I think we will try and use the currently available statistics for what they're worth, the labor force survey, other register statistics, and we will also look into what more is needed to actually describe what is going on, so that we can move forward from discussing what the correct numbers are and what they should be, and try to give some better advice on what can be done and how we can do it.
Very good. Thank you. Before you leave, the report, Wolfgang's report, will be sent to all participants. And further, we have gifts for the external presenters, as always. Solveig?